So there's lots of different ways we can hide things in Blender. At the object level, so here in object mode, we can hide things by clicking the eye icon next to the object in the outliner here. So if I were to click that, that'll hide that. Or I could actually click and drag to turn off multiple objects, or then click and drag back up to turn these objects on. So we have this cube, Suzanne, and Taurus here. Note that if I just click these objects' eye icon and hide their visibility in the 3D viewport, even though we can't see them, these will still render. So if I were to click my render button, we still see that these objects get rendered. So if I press go back here to take me back to the 3D view, I can hide all three of these objects or individual objects from rendering by clicking this little render icon next to their name. I could even turn the visibility of these three objects back on in the 3D view, and then say click the render icon of the Suzanne head here. And notice down here in our camera view, which our camera view is always attempting to give us the best possible representation of what our rendered image or animation will actually look like without using up too much resources. So this is reflecting closer to what our actual final render will be. So when we click the render button here, we'll see that the Suzanne head doesn't render because we've clicked the icon off there. So I'll click my go back button here and turn that render icon back on. We can also select any amount of objects in our 3D view here and press H to hide, basically, and that will also hide that selection. Another thing to point out here is if you'll notice down here in this text menu of our 3D view header here, the view menu will also give you this clipping border. And the clipping border is really cool. So all we do to use that is press Alt B, and then we'll see these crosshairs show up. And this means we can drag a rectangle over an area, and anything outside of this rectangle will be hidden. So if I click and drag it there, anything outside of that rectangle will be hidden. So this becomes especially useful when you have very complex scenes with a lot of objects and mesh and things like that. Not only will it reduce the amount of resources Blender is using while updating this 3D view, it also makes it really easy to work with things. If I were to click on one of these objects, such as Suzanne head, and press G to grab, notice that anywhere I move outside of this clipping border I made, the object gets cut off. And so it's not actually being split in half, but this is the area where it's being hidden. Likewise, if I grab this cube, we can see it moving like that. So we can get rid of that either by pressing Alt B again, or of course we could come down here in the view and select clipping border, and that will have gotten rid of that also. So the two situations where that clipping border, the Alt B, will most likely be used is, like I said before, in either a really complex scene and also while you're sculpting. So when you're sculpting in a 3D modeling program, that's one of the situations where the highest amount of resources can be used. So it becomes really helpful in that type of situation too. So say I were to press T to bring up my tool shelf and press my ZeroBrush Sculpt button here and tap Make Sculptable. And I'll tap a few more times on the detail to give us some more detail. So right now we're already dealing with 607,000 faces, which is, not super high, but pretty high. And we can easily get much, much higher than that in terms of how many polygons we're working with. In that type of situation, the clipping border can also become especially useful. So we could press Alt B here and say we just wanted to focus on this one area of whatever we were sculpting. This way, all these resources aren't being eat up on everything else while we just want to work on this one bit here, for instance. So we'll get much more into sculpting and that stuff in the future. I just wanted to show you another really useful application of that clipping border. So I'll press my object mode button here to hop us back into object mode. I'll go ahead and tap Alt B again to get rid of that clipping border. And I'm going to press X to delete that cylinder because we don't really need it. Let's talk about hiding things at the edit mode level. So I'm going to click on the Suzanne head here and then press Tab to go into edit mode. And so it's possible to hide individual faces in addition to hiding individual objects. Say I was trying to get at these faces right here, but maybe I was finding it difficult with these eyeballs. And so I wanted to be able to hide those so I could more easily work around the eyeball socket area. I could select one of the faces here, which will of course deselect everything else, and then hold C to bring up my circle select brush and just paint over this eye area like this. Make sure I get in there. To hide this mesh, I can also tap H, or I can simply use this little menu here to hide that, and so that's hidden, which is good. And so say I wanted to, adjust this loop right here, or, extrude it or something. Who knows, whatever reason. And then so once I'm done there, I can just press show again, and that will show the mesh. So yeah, when we use this hide button here in the edit mode menu, that's not deleting or getting rid of it. It's just, temporarily hiding that specific selection so we can, get some other type of stuff done. So finally, I want to discuss my favorite way of hiding things, and it is a method that I use constantly. And also it can work no matter what mode you're in, edit mode, object mode, whatever. And that is the quick hide option. To give you a better example of how this works, I'm going to go into my projects folder, into this ZeroBrush folder, and under this Pi Manor here. And this was actually something I was working on for a promo for ZeroBrush that I ended up not using. However, I did end up creating a really cool scene from it. So I'm going to press my library expansion button here, and then on this Pi Manor.blend here, I'm just going to click and drag this out into the 3D view, and I'm going to close up my library there. Well, I've got this kind of sweet, mad scientist-y kind of area I was creating. And so what Quick Hide does is it allows you to select any object, like say this top of this canister here, or any selection of object. I could actually select multiple objects here. And rather than hiding the object, it will hide everything else but what you have selected. So say I just wanted to work on this thing right here. To use Quick Hide, I double tap Tab, and this will hide everything but this object I'm working on. So I could then press Tab to go into edit mode and select some things like this. Depending on whatever, my purpose was for, working on this. Maybe I wanted to create a new piece of mesh here or something by pressing Shift D, something like this, who knows. But when I'm done, all I do is double tap Tab, the Tab key, the key we use to go in and out of object and edit mode. I just double tap that quickly and everything's back. So likewise, say I just wanted to work on this robot here. Well, you see that this robot is highlighted in green. That means that this robot is actually part of a group. So if I were to press Shift A and under this groups menu, under select group, turn on select by group there, click that. Then I can actually select entire grouped objects such as this vat here, this whole table here. If I click on any part of that group, the entire group will be selected. So one of these groups I have is this robot group here, and we'll get into groups in a later video. But so say I have all that selected there, and I just want to work on this, so I double tap Tab, and now we're just working with the robot. So I could press Shift A and under select group, shut that off for a second, so I could work on these individual objects. Say I wanted to, I don't know, make this bigger or something, or rotate a hand or something like that. So when I was done with that, I just double tap Tab and everything's back to how it was. And so this works in edit mode, painting mode, what have you. So say I wanted to begin painting the top of this vat thing here. So I press T to bring up my tool shelf, and I press my texture paint button here. And so I'm painting this, which this is a clone of this, and we'll get into all that in a later video as well. But say I was getting really distracted by all the other objects in the scene, I could just double tap Tab, and I'm working on this individual object here, and can do whatever I need to get done here and what have you. And then when I'm done, I just double tap Tab and everything's back. So that's Quick Hide, and an extremely useful feature, one that I use constantly, especially when I need to edit mesh from a complex object or group of objects and such. Very useful feature.